Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today I'm going to be showing you how to improve your flux core welds. Now, by no means am I a professional, so take this with a grain of salt, but these are just some of the techniques and tips and tricks I've learned on how to improve the physical appearance and the structure of your welds. Here's everything we're going to be using, and we got a few joints prepped. So yeah, let's get into this. Here's the welder we're going to be using, a Lincoln Electric weld pack. It's been in the family for around 8 years, and me and my dad have been sharing it over the past few years. So, obviously it's not in the best conditions. The rollers are on their way out. I've had the liner replaced. We're using Lincoln Intershield 211 NP wire. This is the best possible wire you can run. It costs about $9 a roll. Before you start welding, be sure you set the polarity to DC negative. It's in the instructions manual, so be sure you look it over. Some of them come DC positive from factory, so be sure you change that over to DC negative. It's going to create less spatter and better looking welds, so yeah, be sure you set that. So as a beginner, you'll find that you'll have to change these pretty often, and make sure you do keep yours clean. Also, be sure you adjust the wire so you can stop it with your finger. Now, as a beginner, you'll want to get in the habit of cleaning your surfaces down and making sure they're free of rust. Sometimes a little wipe is all it takes to create a better weld. One thing that is very unique with flux core is that you do not have to weld inside. You can weld outside under strong winds because the flux is integrated in the wire, and you don't have to worry about any shielding gas blown away. So that's a plus of flux core welding. And since the flux is integrated in the wire, it is going to be a pretty sloppy and discouraging welding process. It's going to produce lots of spatter, smoke. So that's something you're going to have to get used to, and keep that in mind. It can be discouraging sometimes when you're first starting, but you know, you have to get used to it. You have to kind of work with it, so yeah. Before we start welding, make sure you have some sleeves on. Gloves are a must. As you're welding, there's going to be a slight puddle of slag. And remember, when there's slag, you drag, so you always want to drag to create the best and most optimal weld. Pretty steep angle, but not too steep. And we want to drag it. And with more practice, you should be able to nail this. The closer you're going to hold the tip, the more heat you're going to drive in the metal, and the farther, the colder it's going to weld. So keep that in mind. As you're welding, you want to be sure you closely watch the puddle, watch the leading edge, and watch the slag. For good looking welds, you want to be sure you include oscillations in the welds, or basically manipulation, puddle manipulation, whether it's the circly eyes, the E's, the zigzags. I personally do all of them. You don't want to go too crazy with it, but just little slight to slight movement, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So we've got everything out the way. We're going to go ahead and start welding. Now remember, if you're not sure what settings to use, there's always a chart on the inside of the welder, and it should tell you a lot of information about what proper settings to run. But with more practice, you'll be able to nail the settings down every time. So here's the first joint. As you can see, it's not too thick, nor is it too thin. This should be perfect for showing you guys how to create a better weld. I like to hold my gun like this, keep it very stable, and also brace my arm against the table. We got our mask. So like I said, guys, there is lots of slag and it's just an ugly mess, but after we wire brush it, it should reveal the real weld. One thing you do want to avoid when welding is undercut. Undercut is scary. It can cause weld failure, cracks, etc. So undercut is caused by welding too hot, and you want to be sure you avoid it at all times. But as you can see here, we have a pretty decent bead. This is mostly a dial-in bead. I'm going to flip it. This bead I was just dialing in. This one came out pretty nice. And this one looks very nice except for all that undercut. As you can see, the weld puddle kind of digs into the metal and creates that lip. And yeah, that is not good. It's going to crack under pressure. So you want to be sure to avoid that. Kind of disappointing because it looks very nice, but all that undercut is no good. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna try that same technique, a steep rod angle, dragging, and circly eyes, and we're gonna see what that gets us on this. So yeah, not bad for the first welds of the day, but we could do better. So this is actually just multiple beads that I connected. The first one was here. I had a restart, which it created kind of this bead, and then this one actually looks very good. And then this one, the metal was thin, so yeah, overall, you know, it's good. But this bead right here has the perfect profile, has those perfect ripples, no undercut. So this right here is what I'm looking for. So yeah. Alright, I'm gonna see if I can knock that down. Yeah, these tacks aren't holding. Oops. Here's that piece. We tacked it to the table, and we tried to break it, but I'm actually surprised it didn't break. Okay, now we're moving on to the pipe test. No, it's not one of those 6G overhead certified blah 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 tests. It's just kind of like a experiment. I've actually never welded something like this before. Never welded any pipes like this, but we're gonna give it a shot. We went ahead and beveled the edges. We're gonna turn the amperage up and have some fun. Okay, there we go, guys. Let's start welding. So there y'all go. It was a pretty hot pass, so there is undercut, there is lots of spatter, but some of them actually turned out pretty good. So we're gonna go over this one more time. So there y'all go. Pretty ugly, there is undercut, but this was mostly just for fun. So yeah. So what can we take from this? Well, we can take that Flux core isn't really the best physically appearing and the most optimal welding process, but for those beginners out there that are just trying to learn how to weld, just trying to learn how to get by, it could be a good process for you. If you want to take on this Flux core challenge, then send me your pictures on Instagram or email them to me. I'll be happy to see what kind of beads you can make. Honestly, they weren't the best beads, but it sure will do. I learned a good bit from this video and it was pretty fun to make, so if you enjoyed it, leave a like down below. And be sure you stay tuned for the part 2 of this video, which will be stick welding. And we could actually make way better looking welds with the stick welder. So be sure you stay tuned for that. And I will have to see y'all. Stay tuned for more. Peace.